Coming up next is a very important and key discussion on the topic, NexGen Tech, redefining the future of tech services. With the unprecedented pace of tech evolution, advanced digital technologies are powering enterprises for differentiated outcomes and impact for their stakeholders. It's imperative for tech service players to unlock potential from these advanced, deep technologies to deliver customer value. This requires reimagining business models, collaborating effectively with partners in the ecosystem, and embedding deep tech innovation into their DNA, and then offering this to their clients. This is an in-conversation chat hosted by Vikash Jain, Managing Director and Senior Partner, BCG. Vikash leads BCG's technology, media, and telecom practice in India and co-leads BCG's growth tech efforts. He is a leading expert in the IT and IT-enabled service space. Vikash will be speaking to Ananth Krishnan, EVP and CTO, TCS. Ananth directs research and innovation in TCS, India's largest IT company. Under his leadership, TCS has created a significant portfolio of patents, papers, and IP. He's part of several governing councils of academia, industry advisory boards, and government committees. Over to you, Vikash. Waiting for this conversation to happen.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction, Shreya. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to have an interesting conversation with Ananth Krishnan. Ananth is the CTO of TCS. He's been in that role since 2005 and has had the chance to look at this industry evolve quite materially over the last 16, 17 years. A quick intro about Ananth, a technologist by heart. Currently, he directs research and innovation at TCS and has led a lot of pioneering initiatives in his role over the last 15, 20 years. He's had an illustrious history in technology and many accolades. And I'll list out a few of them. He was named the top 25 CTO by InfoWorld in 2007. He was also named the top 100 IT leaders by Computer World in 2007 again. An interesting fact about Ananth, he was an active quizzer during his college days in IIT. And the winner was called the Brain of IIT, and he's had the privilege of having that in 1986 during his days, and has also been awarded the Distinguished Alumni of IIT Delhi, and he received that award in 2009. So that's Ananth for you. Ananth, thank you so much for joining me this morning for a conversation, and I look forward to the discussion.
Pleasure, Vikash. Great to be here.
Thank you. Look, I'll just put some context here, and I think we broadly all understand what's going on. We are at an era of unprecedented technological changes. It is accelerating at a pace that most companies and industries are struggling to catch up, which is where people like Ananth come in place and start to make sense a lot of that, right? And the technology shift spans all parts. They're touching as close to the sciences, and I think from what I've heard about Ananth, is very passionate about how that plays up, to computational technologies and how that's disrupting or creating opportunities, to connectivity technologies like 5G, which is going to fundamentally revolutionize how businesses and companies operate and the opportunity that it creates for all of us and their companies. That's what the environment we are living in. At the same time, what's also going on importantly, these technologies are finding their way into the enterprise. These are a set of companies that all of us are working together with. They are being leveraged very often and being increasingly seen as an important part of the business. At one level, it is a must-do. And at the next level, it is a source of differentiation, competitive advantage in the market. So the discussion I want to spend time with Ananth is, with this environment around technology, with this pace of change, what does this mean for all of us? And one of the important things, at least I've personally observed over my view of this industry, the last maybe 15 odd years where I've been watching this closely, is the role of CTO is beginning to become more and more important. So we have the man, Ananth. And Ananth, let me start with this first question to you. What's your take on the role that you've been playing over the last 15, 20 years, and how have you seen this shift as technology gets more deeply embedded in the services business proposition and the changes that are going around us?
Vikash, it's been quite a journey as you've beautifully summarized. And if I reflect back on the mission statement that I was given as the first CTO of TCS many years ago, it was clear that there would be at least three different dimensions given the nature of TCS's business a decade and a half ago. First of all, we had a very strong anchoring in creating intellectual property. We had just launched our first products back then. Very strong traditional research. TCS Research was founded in 1981. This year is the 40th year, etc. So there was that. The inventiveness and the creation of intellectual property and sort of growing that is one aspect of the role. Second, it was a mindset and really a recognition that we cannot and perhaps should not try to do everything ourselves. So the ecosystem thinking, creating what we today call the TCS Co-Innovation Network was embedded into this role. Build partnerships with academia for research, as an example, or startups for specific niche value propositions, with the major technology players for more sort of scaled interventions, with, in our context, with the larger Tata Group, and finally with customers as well to co-create value. So that was baked into this role. And thirdly, while the first two were fun because you invent stuff and you meet very interesting people from all the technology hotspots of the world, the third responsibility, I think, was the most crucial, which is to convert these great ideas in the context of TCS's business into a constant stream, predictable stream of innovations. And there I was very fortunate to be coached by perhaps the master himself. Clay Christensen was an independent director on our board, and he took it upon himself to sort of teach me the basics. And it's been quite a journey to learn from Clay. Clay unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, but his teachings are enormously useful. And I will not spend time on it, but basically pay attention to the here and now business and what continuous improvement and innovation is required. Watch the customer and see what kind of fundamental shift the customer's business is going to have, and keep pace with that. Jobs to be done. What job is the customer hiring you for? So that requires a little longer horizon innovation thinking. And finally, look at the blue sky, the disruptive, and place your bets on that. So that's the formula that I've been running for now all the time, and it's been quite a ride, as you can imagine.
And let me just build on that. And it's actually interesting. You mentioned a few things which are important to this industry. And one of the questions keep coming up is, innovation is good. Are we traversing the journey of innovation, incubation, and commercialization? That's a framework we use to take any idea to market. And on the side of technology, as you've seen this industry evolve, where do you place them in taking real cutting edge innovation around tech and then being able to successfully leverage to a commercial opportunity and then being very deeply accretive to the business? How do you see that journey playing out for this sector?
Sometimes it becomes very trite to say that the pace of technology change keeps increasing. But anecdotally, the last decade and a half actually has been perhaps a little more active than previous decades, in the sense that many of the things that we take for granted today, cloud as an example, or large-scale data and AI, the ability to have literally a very powerful computing device in everybody's pocket. These have not happened overnight, but over the last decade and a half, these are now visible parts of the technology landscape for anybody. And equally, things like cybersecurity to manage the risk and so on and so forth. So these are, let me call it, the bread and butter technology changes. But these technology changes have proliferated at a pace where now practically all of humanity, billions of people, can have meaningful use of these technologies in their day-to-day lives.
Correct.
Directly or indirectly. So that has spawned a whole range of disruptions in the business models of our customers. A bank calls itself a technology company. An airline cannot ignore technology. A pharmaceutical company can now produce, certify, and deploy billions of vaccines literally in a matter of months. See, these are very visible, tangible impact of these technologies that sometimes we in the computing and the services and products industry, we don't actually feel this way, but for those industries, it is like the whole world is changed.
Absolutely.
The impact of that on our business is that we have to look at it from the lens to say, all right, these technologies are there is cloud, there is AI, there is this, there is that. What can I do today to make myself, let's say, more efficient? That's the bottom line where everybody starts. So, right, you look at it for automation, you look at it for scale, you look at it for driving down cost, you drive it for efficiency, create new delivery models, and so on. So that's your core innovation that you have to do. Otherwise, you're kind of not even in the game. So that's one type of activity that everybody has to do. But the others fall in the bucket that you just. It's beyond your boundary as an organization. It's about what can you do with these technologies to change the business of your customers. That's the dialogue that is now occupying every conversation, every customer, and every product. Right? So that's the big shift which has happened in the last decade and a half. It's no longer about just using these technologies for our business and somehow sort of continuing to just do services and so on and so forth, but it is fundamentally changing the customer's expectation and our response to that customer expectation in every industry, every part of it.
And that's important, and I want to build on that question, and that to me starts to pose a more fundamental set of strategic question. I mean, and one view of the world, and may not be always true, is as you start embedding technology into the business into your offerings and value proposition, you're getting into the space of, we call it products, platforms, IP-driven capabilities and offerings to the market. Many of those inherently have a very different business model, very different economic model, and very different operating model. It varies by the way you think about investment first versus revenue first. I mean, look, we are a services company. It takes a lot for us to cough up $10 million investment. And I've always given this example that a manufacturing company puts $1 billion first and then expects $1 after 2, 3, 4, 5 years because you have to get a plant in place, a distribution in place, R&D in place, all of that stuff. Whereas the service industry said, where can I get the first $100 million before I start putting my first dollar of investment, right? I mean, it's very fundamentally different. And one of the questions that always exists on the industry is, can those two business models coexist as you look at firms like yours and your peers, which is very different rhythm, very different investment models, very different economic models, yet they need to coexist. And the challenge is that making them coexist is very hard, and we don't have enough successful example. At least anecdotally, one doesn't come across. What's your take on that, and what questions would it pose on companies such as yours, and as you try to incorporate technology into your offering, solution, and proposition, which, as you rightly said, is becoming more of a demand and asked from your customers versus just pure vanilla services and capabilities and skills? What's your take on that, and how do you see that evolving from a business model choices available out there?
At the industry level, Vikash, I would tend to agree with you. These are two fundamental different mindsets and business models, as you have said. And there's nothing right or wrong about each of them. But if I now zero in on TCS, the way we try to address this, Rajesh has gone on record that I think 2 or 3 years ago, that's something that we have been practicing for many years. He called it the 3P strategy. Right? So patents, which is the intellectual capital, products, and platforms. And that's the kind of capability that I contribute materially to, because that's by and large what my role is. NGS more recently, just I think a couple of months ago, while he was pushed on numbers and so on, so he said something like, more than a double-digit percentage of TCS is actually in this bucket of products platform, which is fairly material. I mean, you know our revenue numbers, and if it's materially more than 10%, then it's not a small number anymore. But it is a set of successes, and you rightly said, a set of learning. On one side, the TCS Banks product, Ignio, the TCS Hobbs product, or the ADD platform, or the BFSI platform, the Diligenta platform, and so on, have done extremely well. They've scaled to many hundreds of millions of dollars and so on. On the other side, there are the newer products and so on, which are still in the double-digit millions and so on. But it's at an aggregate, it is quite interesting. But the cultural part and the business model part that you've highlighted, I think, is the learning. There is always a service core to TCS. So let me call that the base proposition. And that's an engine that runs, you see opportunities, you have to have the right skill sets, you need to have the right partnerships, you need to have the right delivery models, the quality models, and all of that. So that, by and large, I think everybody has figured out, including us. Then there is that if I match it against the customer expectation shift, just a skilled individual is no longer good enough, or even a skilled delivery model is not good enough. You need accelerators, you need solutions, you need something which is a differentiator in the eyes of the customer, but also perhaps a competitive input from your side into the customer's business. This is probably not in the context of full-fledged products and platforms and IP and so on, but these are solutions, accelerators, frameworks, whatever you want to call them. And these are sort of proprietary, but they are used in a very service-embedded manner. So let's call that out as a delta on top of the pure services model. That also, by and large, I think everybody gets. When you cross the chasm into IP-led models, that's where the dilemma that you articulated is there in front of many people. Some people decide to do it at a certain level. We have decided to scale it a lot more than many others, and so on. But essentially, that requires a mindset which says that there is a job to be done that the customer or the market requires. There is a proposition that you, as the partner, the service provider or the product provider or the platform provider, have a competitive advantage that you can encapsulate that into a product or a platform, which you can then offer commercially in today's context and today's technology, many different ways. You can offer it on the cloud, you can offer it as an API, you can offer it as a outcome-based model. You can do many things that can change the game as far as the customer's business is concerned. For that, you need the intellectual property underpin. Right? So that is where the investment part of it comes in. Now, whether it's $100 million, whether it's $500 million, that's really your appetite. But the model is there, and it's been tried by everybody. Some people like us have tried it at scale, and we are happy with it. Others will be just about trying it. But I think inevitably, embedding intellectual property into your business model and value proposition, not just bilaterally with your customer, but in a true ecosystem way, that you are now combining your IP with, let's say, a proposition from a startup or a proposition from a hyperscaler cloud, create that ecosystem together, perhaps with a customer. When we have articulated our cloud progression, it's more or less following the same thing. I mean, there's a basic cloud proposition, skill-based, you get the cloud deployment done, and that's where most of us are in, at least for the last year or two. Already we are seeing the second phase, which is the solutions, products, platforms coming in. Mm-hmm. Third phase, which is the ecosystem driven, is in my bailiwick, so to speak, and I'm partnering a lot with our own businesses, with customers' businesses, and with the hyperscalers and many others to bring that ecosystem effect together to see what new business models can be created, embedded into the customer's value proposition, where we are not just providers, but probably participants as well.
Ananth, I just want to probe on the point you said. Look, and what I'm trying to get a handle on is what makes it successful at scale. You talked about mindset shift. Could you give me a bit more color? And again, I'm sure some of this is competitive, so I'll be respectful of that. But just want to get a bit more color, because it's a bit broad term. I mean, a simple point of mindset change would be you expect investment cycles to be different. You expect margin profiles to be different. I mean, that's as simple as the measurement metrics you use for the two different business models are very different. What is it that helps build that at scale? Or has allowed you to build this at scale? Let me put it that way.
See, without articulating too much about what and how we have done it, but clearly there is a method to the way in which, let's say, a pure play, product-led, IP-led company goes about its business.
Correct.
That's fairly well understood. And they have also morphed over the years. I mean, they're focused on branding, they're focused on propositions, they're focused on partnerships, ecosystems, a whole value chain that service providers or integrators or VARs and so on and so forth. So there is that model which is quite well understood. But even that world of here is a product that I have and I'm a pure product company is changing, right? So I don't think there are any hard boundaries between I am a hardware company, I am a software company, I'm a product company, I'm a service company. I think everybody now has a hybrid model.
Correct.
And there are no more pure plays of any sort. So what has really come out in the last perhaps 5 or 7 years is that you have to find the right value proposition for not just you as an individual company, but the customer value proposition at a market level to say that this is what is going to fly. Then to fulfill that customer value expectation and proposition, you have to decide what is it that you'll do. You might lead that value proposition, but in many cases you can't do everything. Right? If you're a pure play product company, you might need an integrator. If you're an integrator, you might need some gaps to be filled because the product that you're trying to integrate doesn't have everything that the market or the customer value proposition demands. So you might need to bring in your smaller partners and so on. So this way, the ecosystem emerges as a way to fulfill that customer value opportunity. In many cases, that becomes a reasonably long-lived business model in itself. So it's a tailored business model. So the skill sets and the mindset that I indicated, one is, of course, that you want to play this game as a lead participant or sometimes even the orchestrator. The second is that others are willing to partner with you. Right? So it's like, you can't dress up and say, I want to go to the party, but others have to come to the party, right? So that's the second thing. So your ecosystem friendliness becomes an important part. The last part of it is execution. I mean, execution doesn't go away anywhere. Whether you're running a product, you're running IP, you're running services, you're running integration, ecosystem, business models, commercials, whatever, you need to be able to execute it so that the output is competitive and it wins. If not, you go back to the drawing board. Something was wrong. Either your product was wrong, your placement was wrong, or your pricing was wrong, or your business model was wrong, whatever. So those are the fundamentals that
it's very interesting. And I'm actually taking away the last point somewhat strongly away. You can have all the ideas, but if you can bring it down to real hardcore execution, there is a way to make it work. And it's a very interesting thought and probably a much deeper thought than I would have spent time on. And the other thing which you have said, which I actually have passionately believed in the past, is we are in a world where we've always talked about productization of services. And I've also talked about a view of, for the lack of a better word, servicification of products. Right. And, SaaS is a manifestation of that at one place. And, all the things that we have been doing as solutions, the accelerators and IP-led services are the other one, which has codified some of the product. And, the twain shall meet and twain does meet. But at the middle of it, what I'm taking away is a very strong foundation of tight execution and rigorous execution, which will require to make it happen. That's a good way to kind of think about that. Ananth, we've run out of time. Absolute pleasure talking to you. I was telling the team before this that, look, in terms of technology, can't spend a lot of time. You are a professor and I'm a student of technology and keep learning. So, but loved the conversation. Thank you for your time. It was enjoyable to have you here. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Shreya.
Thank you so much, Vikash. Incredible insights again there. And what a very sort of an interesting look at how technology and the whole learning construct and concept sort of plays into this very deep learning mechanism. The relationship between the professor, the relationship between the learner. I mean, I'm just still mind-boggled with all that has to be unpacked in this context.